Hello and welcome! Today I have been requested to review The Legend of Zelda Phantom Hourglass. Now my history with this game is a little foggy to me, as I do remember knowing of it and its exclusive Nintendo DS Lite model, but I've had no desire to actually play the game back in the day, which I actually find quite odd since I personally prefer portable top-down Zelda games than the 3D console Zelda games. And yet, I never got this game until now. So, let's go and see what I missed out on. Today's video is sponsored by us at the 16-Bit Store. New to the 16-Bit Store is our 3D printable Nintendo DS styluses. After months of designing and testing, we now have 3D printable replacement styluses for the Nintendo DS, DS Lite, DSi, and the DSi XL. Our styluses are printed specifically for strength, so your styluses will not just fit your system comfortably, but it can be removed easily and won't accidentally fall out. If you're interested or want to support the channel, please visit the 16-Bit Store on eBay or Etsy. I'll have links in this video's description or in the cards. Now, when I started playing the Phantom Hourglass, I wanted to go into the game blind, so that way I didn't know all the twists and the turns and potentially any of the pitfalls that went into this game. But as I started a new game, I was actually quite surprised to see in the opening cutscene that the game was a direct continuation of the Wind Waker, one of the few 3D Zelda games which I actually quite like, especially with its story. And much of the same can actually be said about the Phantom Hourglass's story too. Much of its exposition is told through these wonderful paper cutouts. And though many of the zany characters are gone from the Wind Waker, the new cast of colorful characters that you meet along the way in the Phantom Hourglass are just as fun and enjoyable in their own unique way. And in my view, the new characters look a lot better than some of the returning casts from the Wind Waker. So, the Phantom Hourglass was looking to be quite a promising Zelda game. That was until the cutscene ended and I was given free rein with the controls. That's where my disappointment was starting to mount and a lot of my issues with the game started rearing its head. You see, this is the very first Zelda game to use the touchscreen as an input method, and it gives you both some of the most useful features ever to be implemented in a Zelda game and some of the worst. On the one hand, the touchscreen allows you to doodle and scratch whatever you want on the in-game maps. And this is absolutely a fantastic and some of the most unique features that I've ever seen in a Zelda game. Breath of the Wild and any of the Wii U Zelda games would have benefited from being able to doodle and sketch wherever you wanted on the in-game maps. Stamps are dumb in comparison. But on the other hand, someone in Nintendo got it in their heads that the touchscreen was advanced enough on the DS that it could be used to control the entire game on it. From Link's movements to attacks to rolling and anything else you can think that Link can do and move, it's done on the touchscreen. And from my time playing with it, Nintendo was obviously asking way too much from this one very rudimentary input method to do. But I can also understand why Nintendo decided to make the controls the way they are. Since the Nintendo DS doesn't have the luxury of an analog controller like other portable systems and future Nintendo systems have, in order to give the player free-flowing movement which other Zelda games have had since Ocarina of Time, Nintendo decided to give the Phantom Hourglass touchscreen controls for its movements. And with the touchscreen controls, the game actually has a bit of precision. More precision and control of your weapons and Link than I've ever seen in Zelda games that I've played prior to this one. As I said, I do understand why Nintendo decided to do this. But that's not to say I enjoy the compromises that had to come from giving Link full touch controls. The enemies, bosses, and even Link's own movement have been slowed down significantly in order to not overwhelm the player while they're playing. I always felt the game was a little too slow for its liking. I feel if it was just 10 to 15% faster, it would flow just as nicely as something like the Minish Cap or the Game Boy Zelda games. In fact, speaking of the enemies, I felt as if their density has also been greatly reduced. There's not as much going on the screen at once in comparison to Zelda games prior. And even when you do get overwhelmed, weapons like the bow and arrow and the boomerang are surprisingly overpowered that you don't really need to worry about enemies as you're fighting. All you really need to do is just stun them long enough for you to just mash the touchscreen in order to kill them off. Which I think is quite sad, especially since the rest of this game is a very polished top-down Zelda game. It's like they took what was made with Minish Cap, replaced the shrinking and growing with sailing, and converted the graphics to 3D. The islands that you get to visit are fun to explore, and the dungeons are all unique puzzle boxes to solve, though the combat in the dungeons are compromised as heck. I can't think of a single bad dungeon that I've played, not even the Palace of the Ocean King. Though a second waypoint somewhere in the dungeon would have been quite nice. And when I said in my Minish Cap review that I wanted more and it wasn't in the game, this was the type of more that I was actually looking for. More weapons, more unique scenarios, and just more for you to do. I honestly wish the Minish Cap took a few dungeons from this game and had it in its game to pad out the rest of the experience. But unlike the Minish Cap, where I feel the game's world can be densely packed with lots to do, the Phantom Hourglass feels big, but mostly barren. I feel this might have been a holdover from the Wind Waker, but unlike the Wind Waker, there just isn't a lot to do in this open sea here. And from its limited islands that you can visit, I feel they're very barren, out of place, with not a lot of variation of what you can actually do on each island. It feels as if what needed to be done in the game was made first, then an island was designed around that one idea, and as a result the islands feel sort of one and done. You visit it, you don't really need to go back, or it's sort of just there for that one thing. Now, I am happy that I've had the opportunity to sit down and to play the Phantom Hourglass after all these years. I do think it's a fun and very entertaining DS game. But I can absolutely see why my younger self had no desire to go out and get this game, especially with its touch controls. I respect how well they work, but I do not feel the touch controls adds enough to the game to make me forgive or to ignore the issues which they bring in. But if you can look beyond the touch controls, then the Phantom Hourglass is a pretty good title to add to your DS library. But for me, I'm going to be putting this game back on my shelf and probably stick with my 2D Zelda games on Game Boy, or if I'm in the mood to play on a DS system like the 3DS, I'll probably stick with A Link Between Worlds. But anyways, thank you ever so much for watching. I hope you have yourself a good day, and as always, take care. And if you have anything you would like to see us talk about in future viewer specials, please leave it below. Or if you wish to participate, please check out our community page for future polls.